Jackie, I'm having problems. Can you help me? I can't get it to, I'm on it, but I can't hear anything. Yes.
You did these. I need glasses. Hold on.
Okay, so here's me, but I can't.
What is that mute? What do they say down here?
I can see and hear you, Steve.
Hi, this is Steve Agnew. I was just trying to make sure I was pushing the right buttons.
Yeah, I think it's just really quiet right now. We haven't started yet.
Okay, thank you. I'll mute until we get started.
We can hear you in council chambers. We're getting going here pretty quick.
A fun fact for all of us that are continuing to be muted the entire meeting. If you've got a keyboard or whatever, if you hold your space bar down, it temporarily unmutes you. So it's kind of like a push to talk function.
Good to know.
All right, at this time, we will call to order the City of Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for December 9th, 2020. Will you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item A2, roll call, please.
Great. Chairman Twait?
Here.
Commissioner Springer?
Here.
Okay. Commissioner Halstead?
Here?
Commissioner McIntyre? He is here on
Here.
Zoom. Let me see. Right. Vice Chair Fikes? Here. And Commissioner Greenberg?
Here.
Right, you have a quorum?
All right, thank you. A3, agenda approval. Wishes of the commission. Vice Chair Fikes.
Thank you, Chairperson Twait. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to accept the agenda.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Halstead. Any objections? Seeing none and hearing none, the agenda is approved. Item A4, consent agenda. Wishes of the commission.
Commissioner Chair Twait, I would like to make a motion for acceptance of the consent agenda.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Halstead seconds. Any objections? Seeing none, hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Takes us down to item C, scheduled public comment. We have none. Item D, unscheduled public comment. Anyone from the public wishing to speak to an item that is not on the agenda?
And if you wanted to speak to anything not on the agenda, you can use the raise hand feature or unmute yourself with *6.
Looks like we are okay to move on. You'll get another chance at the end if that was a mistake, but we will move on now to item E, consideration of plats. Item E1 is Resolution PZ 2020-36, preliminary subdivision plat of Integrity Plaza 2, submitted by Cliff Baker, Surveyor, 201 Barrow Street, Unit 202, Anchorage, on behalf of Cliff Baker, 201 Barrow Street, Unit 202, Anchorage. Staff report.
Okay, Chairman Twait, this is a preliminary plat for a subdivision in Kenai that will combine Tract A and Lot 1 of Integrity Plaza Integrity Plaza. The properties are zone general commercial and suburban residential. The current land use is a professional office building, an accessory structure, and a single-family dwelling. The land use plan calls for general commercial and suburban residential. The the owner is also the surveyor. He's had this property for quite some time. I'm sure you were familiar with the Integrity Surveys building. That's where it was at. Currently, there is that building, there is a little structure on the upper corner that is not classified as a single-family dwelling. It's an accessory structure. It's just used for storage. And then where the little square is, there is actually a single-family dwelling. It's the owner's intent to vacate the property line and convert to acreage, so it's all in one parcel. The revised parcel will be approximately, I lost it. Approximately 2.19 acres or 95,390 square feet. There is access currently to the property via the Kenai Spur Highway and also access via Swyers Drive. And the property is serviced by city water and sewer. So there would not be an installation agreement required to install water and sewer. If you look on the planning and zoning map, a large portion of Tract A is zoned general commercial, and the southern portion south of Lot 1 Integrity Plaza is zoned as suburban residential. The intent of the property owner is to, after this is all combined, to request a rezone to all of the entire tract being zone general commercial. The plat does meet the design standards pursuant to KMC 14.10.080. We recommend approval. Administration recommends approval of the plat subject to the condition that further development of the property is to conform to all federal, state, and local regulations. And that's the end of my staff report.
All right, thank you. Can we get a motion?
I can make a motion?
Vice Chair Fikes.
Chairman Twait, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion for acceptance of Resolution PZ 2020-35, application for 36, my apology. Resolution PZ 2020-36, a preliminary subdivision plat of Integrity Plaza Number 2, submitted by Cliff Baker, Surveyor 2101 Bow Street, Unit 302.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All right, at this time, we'll open it up for public testimony. Anyone wishing to testify to PZ 2020-36?
And again, you may use the raise hand feature on Zoom, or you can unmute yourself with *6.
Doesn't appear to have anyone wishing to testify, so we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Anyone have any comments or discussion items? I'm going to assume there are none. check with Vice Chair Fikes. You're good?
I am good, thank you.
All right, then we will please call the roll.
All right, Chair Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes?
Commissioner McIntyre,
Yes.
Commissioner, okay. Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Yes.
and Commissioner Greenberg.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Can you hear me?
All right, thank you. We will move on to item F, public hearings. F1 is Resolution PZ 2020-35, an application for a conditional use permit for 7 zero-lot line townhome dwellings on Tract A, Kenai Landing Cottages, located at 2101 Bow Picker Lane. Application submitted by Kenai Landing, Inc., 2101 Bow Picker Lane. Staff report.
Thank you, Chairman Twait. I am prepared to speak on this one. This application is submitted by Kenai Landing. They own a 50-acre parcel across the river that is currently segregated into different condominium units. And the plan of the developer is, for the first phase, is to build 7 townhouses on the property, consisting of 2 two-unit townhouses and 1 3-unit townhouse. The land is zoned heavy industrial. It used to be primarily a seafood processing area, although recently it's undergone quite a bit of change. It is where the Cannery Lodge is, and there was also, the owners developed a restaurant and conference center in the old Sockeyes warehouse that has since been taken down, and the new development proposed is these townhouses. In the heavy industrial zone, townhouses are allowed by conditional use. Townhouses under our planning code require that certain criteria be met, as well as the conditional use criteria. So the townhouse, for townhouses, they must, the development must conform with the adopted comprehensive plan, and the staff recommendation is that it does meet the current comprehensive plan by encouraging quality of life in Kenai and promoting that, providing economic development, and land use strategies to implement a forward-looking approach to community growth. As this area transitions from seafood processing, these proposed townhouse units, I'm not sure if they're intended by the owner for rent or just for individual owners, but anyway, building these units will bring more people into our community, or people will relocate in the community. I think it provides economic development and supports our community growth. Additionally, for townhouses to be approved by the Commission, there must be available public services and facilities adequate to serve the development. Currently, as part of the association, I believe there's water as well as wastewater services that are provided by the condominium association or the owners, as well as they will provide all of their own road maintenance and that sort of thing within the area. I did check with both our police chief and our fire chief, and they were content that they were able to adequately serve the proposed development. Third is that health, safety, and welfare will not be jeopardized by the proposed development. You know, there's nothing that we could really find that would jeopardize any of that with just 7 units at this time, given the scope of the development as well as the available resources, whether it's fire, emergency, medical, wastewater, health, safety. A sort of catch-all is that standards for townhouse development are satisfied as required in this section. Whether they are now or not, the proposed resolution to be approved by the commission would require that all development for the townhouses is satisfied. There's also an opportunity for for the commission to impose any specific conditions deemed necessary. Administration is not proposing any additional conditions other than those required by code. The townhouses have to meet the conditional use permit process. They also require that a detailed development plan be submitted, including a site plan drawn to scale, and including topography, drainage, and the location of the buildings, open spaces, circulation patterns, ingress and egress points, parking, and the general floor plan for the principal buildings. The applicant has submitted all of this. Some of it's a little general at this point, but I think administration is satisfied that these criteria have been met. These units have not all been pre-sold yet, so there's still some opportunity there's a selection of floor plans that they propose to use as to what specific floor plan will go in what specific unit. We don't have that information yet, but we will get that information as the project moves forward. You've been provided topography and drainage, as well as, the road ingress and egress points. Parking areas, as far as I know, all the units are proposed to have their own garages for parking. I don't know if additional parking will be provided. I'm sure the applicants can speak to that. There's also a prohibition on more than 6 contiguous townhouses. That's not an issue right now because they're only proposing sets of 2 and 3 unit development. There's a separation requirement that the series can't be located closer than 15 feet to each other. That's met. Minimum lot width must be 24 feet wide. I think there is some concern as to exactly how that width is measured, but I believe the applicants have no problem meeting the 24-foot minimum width requirement. And as far as minimum lot coverage, that's determined by the Uniform Building Code. And as the project moves forward and construction actually begins, they will need to get a building permit, and they'll meet with our building official that will determine, based on the Uniform Building Code, what those minimum lot coverage requirements are. There has to be storage or a garage. These all have a garage, so a separate storage unit's not required. Before the sale of any of these houses, or townhouses, the owners will have to modify their declaration regarding the condominium association to create the exact units. That's not something that we're concerned about now, but will have to happen prior to any sale. And as far as landscaping is concerned, we don't have concrete landscaping plans, but a landscape site plan will be required when they apply for their building permit prior to any development, and that's a separate process that will be handled by the planning department. As far as conditional use permits are required, the conditions for a conditional use permit, administration recommends that the use is consistent with the purpose of this chapter and the purpose and intent of the zoning district. Townhouses are an allowed conditional use permit based on the land use table in the heavy industrial area. And as we can see, this heavy industrial area is sort of being transformed into other uses than heavy industrial, such as the existing cannery lodge and this proposed development. It is, I think, appropriate, being that it is riverfront property, to develop further in this manner. Another condition for a conditional use permit is the value of adjoining property in the neighborhood will not be significantly impaired. I think this would only add value to adjoining property in the neighborhood. It's consistent with the current use of the cannery lodge there. The proposed use must be in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Like for the townhouse requirement, we think that this project will promote and encourage quality of life in Kenai, provide economic development to support fiscal health, and it's a land use strategy that will implement a forward-looking approach to community growth. I think this is an area like other parts along the river that are inside the city that are ripe for development of this nature. Public services and facilities must be adequate to serve the proposed use. They do have DEC certified water, wastewater. They provide gas, electric, phone, and they will have to provide their own road maintenance for ingress and egress, although the city does provide maintenance right up to the gate. Actually, I'm not sure if that's the city or the state that maintains that, but there is government maintenance. And like I said earlier, our police chief and fire chief are content that they can provide adequate services to the area. The proposed use cannot be harmful to public health, safety, or welfare. The development of 7 townhouse units in this area does not appear to jeopardize the health, safety, or welfare of our community. I can't find any harm that could come from this, and other specific conditions deemed necessary. There are a list of specific conditions that will be a requirement if this resolution is passed. Conformance with all federal, state, and local regulations. They have to do a landscape site plan prior to issuance of a building permit. They have to get a building permit from our city building official prior to construction. The townhouses, as the plans become more concrete, the city would like to get more updated documents as they're available. Prior to the sale of any units, the city must receive evidence that the developer is in compliance with the Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act as provided in state statute. Biannual fire inspection will be done by the city's fire marshal. They must do a yearly conditional use permit report. The applicant must meet with city staff for on-site inspections when requested by the city. A new conditional use permit will be required if there's any change of use in the property. The permit shall expire upon 1 year automatically on termination or interruption of this use, and failure to provide documentation to the city for meeting these conditions will be grounds for suspension or revocation of the conditional use permit. And that's all I have. I think the applicants can provide much more information and answer any questions you might have, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the commission as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bloom. Can we get a motion on the table, please? Vice Chair Fikes.
Chairman Tweed, I'd like to make a motion for acceptance of Resolution PZ 2020-35, an application for a conditional use permit for 7 zero-lot line townhouse dwellings on Tract A, Kenai Landing Cottages, and located at 2101 Bowpicker Lane. Application was submitted by Kenai Landings, 2101 Bowpicker Lane.
All right, can I get a second?
Second?
Seconded by
Second.
Commissioner McIntyre?
That was Mr.
Maybe it was
Halsted.
Halsted. Okay, very good. All right, at this time, we'll open it up for public testimony. I'll let the applicants take the first bite of the apple here, so whoever would like to go ahead and start, you are welcome to do so.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is Steve Agney. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm here with John Faulkner, the president of Kenai Landing, tonight to present this project to you and the commission and to answer any of your questions. As a shareholder and founder with John of Kenai Landing back in 2003, we have worked on this project and are very familiar with both the attributes, the beauty of it, and of course the challenges. As I'm sure you remember, back in 2003, the former Wards Cove Fisheries enterprise had been shut down for 3 years. And we took it over with a business model to convert it to a multi-use, visitor-oriented facility that included continuing fish processing. After 7 years and several $1 million, we had to admit that the visitor industry model just wasn't feasible. The season was just too short, among other challenges. We leased and or sold some of the processing facilities to other dedicated seafood processors who made a good go of it. They made a tremendous effort in terms of investment, but unfortunately, Great Pacific Seafoods, I recall was the name of the company, they went bankrupt and ceased operations. Several years later, the Japanese roe processing enterprise there also had to give up. We all know the hard times that have befallen the salmon processing industry, and unfortunately, it's not likely to come back. Mr. Faulkner and I began planning the conversion of the KLI site to repurpose it in mid-2018, starting to remove some of the older structures, do further cleanup on the property. It's a beautiful location with views of the river and views to the coast, 270 degrees. It's served by public and private utilities. Our efforts to continuing this repurposing were frankly hampered by the COVID, but we pressed on and we're presenting to you tonight our first modest step, a fiscally prudent and a very modest area of about 40,000 square feet in a forward-thinking concept that we believe will be a very attractive and affordable location for both visitors and residents. Our project, we're naming it Homeport, seeks to emulate the field design and function of traditional waterfront communities found on the East Coast, the Great Lakes, and the Gulf Coast. We will build the first townhome structure of 2 units this spring. Using these units as a model, we will seek to pre-sale the other 5, so our total of 7 units, which is this phase 1. This is the process that we successfully used in Homer, where we developed 24 luxury condominium residences over 8 years, probably creating conservatively $18 million of assessed valuation. And in those cases, there's also the continuing tax revenues and bed taxes. Employing this proven process, our goal here is to create a community that is historically relevant in design, that provides affordable, attractive housing to both residents and seasonal owners alike. Consistent with this coastal village concept, these dwellings have relatively small footprints. They cover very little land, and they usually have 2 and 3 stories above. They have multi-purpose hobby or shop space along with garage on level 1. With the attractive financing rates we have now, we believe that if we stick to our plan and move forward, we can get this project started and successfully build out the first phase. All the utilities are present. We have a state-of-the-art, it was a sewer treatment system designed and manufactured by the Renco company. That's a system that provides secondary treatment. Mr. Lauren Lehman helped us by the design of it. It's a proven system used all over the state of Alaska, some in very hostile environments like the North Slope. We are working with a Kenai-based builder, a very successful and knowledgeable gentleman, and we hope that with the continued support and effort, we can break ground this spring and have a standing structure for inspection by buyers with the traditional onset of the summer visitor season. And we can get started on our second building. This site is a beautiful location, and it really begs for repurposing and re-energizing, as many of these older fishing communities have experienced in different locales in the lower 48. We really appreciate you looking at our plan and giving us your support tonight. Mr. Faulkner and I can answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify to PZ 2020-35? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Vice Chair Fikes.
Thank you, Chairman Twait. I have a couple questions just for clarification on the map, and I'm kind of a land zone kind of thing. Is this the old Hyde facility, or is this over by where Pacific Star used to be? I'm having trouble visualizing on the little small map we got here exactly where this facility is. Could you better describe where your guys are at?
Yes, this is directly to the north of Mr. Hyde's facilities in the location of the former Sockeyes restaurant.
Okay, yes.
We've taken down that building.
Yes, thank you. That helps. And then I have a follow-up question in that same line. Is there any kind of concern with a floodplain in that area? Has there been any floodplain studies?
Yeah, we had it verified by survey that we're above floodplain. This part of the property is, it generally slopes from high to lower as you go from the southern end to the north. This area is still pretty high.
Okay, and then on that same note, it was mentioned in discussion that there was going to be a gate from where the city services are to where the current property is. So as this property develops, what are your plans as far as snow removal or street maintenance or anything? And is it going to be any kind of a gated community, or is there going to be public access into the area?
We have not decided whether or not it's going to be formally gated. We have a locked gate right now just because there's not enough activity to keep eyes on the property. But as to your first question, we presently maintain all the roads as part of the condominium association. And then the members, of course, pay the dues to pay for that service.
A follow-up again through the chair. As this further develops, is it your intent for each one of these properties to be owner-occupied, or are you looking at an investment as far as rental properties? I guess what I'm looking at is a flow pattern possibly for understanding for traffic in and out of the area, as right now, obviously, it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of traffic. And so I was just concerned as far as people coming in and out and being able to access during inclement weathers or whatever.
Well, it is our goal for there to be year-round residents on this property. I think it's likely, as we've seen in Homer, that of course the visitor season will see the highest occupancy, but there will be folks living here year-round per our vision as it achieves its successful outcome.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at as far as that, and I'm visualizing that property that you're referencing in Homer, and so I just would hope as it moves further down into the planning phase that there's consideration like fire and police as far as turnarounds and cul-de-sac or hammerhead. I guess that's kind of where my line of thought was on that as far as maneuverability, whether it's the owner occupants or it's some kind of emergency services, there'll be access in and out of there and they won't be kind of claustrophobic getting in and out of that area since it's so condensed, I guess. That was just my concern.
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you. Commissioner Fikes, we have had discussions with the owners about that and our need to be able to get fire trucks and that sort of thing through the area. And they've sort of agreed to work with us, and I think as a condition going forward, we'll continue to plan the ingress and egress routes with them to make sure that our fire department as well as our police department is comfortable that they can get emergency services in that area. One thing to point out, just for the commission's knowledge, is that unlike a subdivision, because this is a common interest property, there's not the same requirements that the city imposes, for example, for public dedicated roads or that sort of thing. This is all still going to be one or two parcels of land with individual condominium units within it. So we don't have as many requirements as far as dedications and a agreement with the owners as far as development criteria. Although we certainly will make sure that it's safe for the public who uses it.
Just to follow up on that, and that sounds great that everybody seems to be on the same page. I was just trying to bring some thought to the table as far as discussion on the topic, having experience in Anchorage where you've seen a lot of the zero lot line properties and difficulty with emergency services. So I'm grateful to hear that all minds are coming together to try and come with the best possible outcome. So that was my concern. Thank you.
All right. Any commissioners virtually out there that have questions or comments?
I've got a question about the wastewater plant. How many other folks are using that right now?
This is Steve. John, if you have anything you want to add to it, because you're down there more than me, but I know Mr. Hyde has had a year-round presence that puts some, effluent into the system. We have a year-round caretaker who has been trained to maintain it. And of course, he logs all of the operating parameters that the manufacturer wants us to log, to make sure it's operating correctly.
I guess I have a concern that it seems like you said some of the other businesses didn't work out so well. That we're using this plant. Is there a potential that it could be just these two units on that plant, and how would they be able to afford operating that correctly?
Well, when I said the other plants did not fare well, I was referring to economic conditions that led to their demise. They had nothing to do with the sewer plant. Pardon me if I misspoke.
No, I guess my concern is that to have a sewer plant of that size, I would imagine you'd need a few payers in it. And is there a possibility that these would be the only two folks that are using it? These two units.
Well, their share will be apportioned based on their land area as it relates to the whole.
Gotcha.
So no, sir, they would not be unduly burdened with the operating costs.
And then the plant would be sustainable for them.
Yes, sir. We have had it in place for 2 years now, and the operating costs in the plant are not great. There's a couple electric motors that circulate the effluent over the media.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of replacement materials. So far, it's been mostly a really well operating system.
Okay, there's no concern that several years down the road that it falls into disrepair or anything. There's something like that.
Well, of course, like any system, it needs maintenance, but it's a pretty simple system, which is the beauty of it. You can go to orenco.com if you're interested. What it works by creating lots of surface area within an enclosed underground vessel for the water to percolate over and get air and oxygen to, and it comes out in a high level of cleanliness, and then it's disposed of subsurface. We just put it on the ground like a traditional septic field.
Gotcha, I understand. it seems like a pretty major facility as long as there's going to be enough enough support to make sure it operates for as long as these places are there. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Any other commissioners out there wishing to comment?
I've got something to say.
Commissioner Quick.
Commissioner Halstead, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I think that this is a great idea for this particular area. I've seen a lot of growth and a lot of interest in that area specifically. I know like across the street there's some new communities that are going in. I think that this is a perfect opportunity to see some positive growth in that area. Like you said, recycling some of the older structures and that type of community. You've got great beach access there. You've got river access. It's a nice spot to be in. So I think, I'm very much in support of this, and I think it's going to work out great for you guys. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McIntyre, did you have something?
Yeah, I had a few questions. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, because I'm having trouble hearing myself. Okay, good. Let me just kind of work through some of these. Some of them are just kind of, I think it sounds like a great idea too, but I do have some maybe technical questions about it, or not so technical. But first of all, given the proximity to the river, and that you're changing the use, does the Corps of Engineers need to be notified or any additional permits obtained for this project?
We have to submit review plans to the River Center to ensure that we're complying with the setback, but we're not entering any of the waters of the United States. These are uplands. If you can recall where the former Sockeyes restaurant was, this is the area that was developed with that building.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. When you mentioned the structures that you're going to build being 2 to 3 stories, you then later mentioned that there would be a garage on the first story. So are you saying there would be a garage plus one more story living space, or 2 to 3 above the garage, making it basically a 3 to 4 story building?
No, it would be, pardon me, sir. It would be 1 or 2 above level 1. So a maximum of 3 stories. We anticipate some of these buildings will be, over time, they would be 2 stories. The building as designed.
Okay, similar.
A 3-story building.
Go ahead, Commissioner McIntyre.
So similar in height to the ones that are, say, down on the spit in Homer?
Similar, a little bit shorter because those have some.
I was saying, so similar in height to the ones that are down on the spit in Homer?
A little less tall because those have some very tall gables, but yes, they would be.
Hello?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yeah, I think we just must have a little bit of a delay, I think, getting out there. So just continue on.
To answer the question, in case we got broken off, the buildings that we have designed will be not as tall as the Homer buildings. They'll be approximately somewhere around 33 to 35 feet at the ridge.
Thank you. Commissioner McIntyre, you got another question? Well, we will go and see if Commissioner Springer has anything.
No, I don't have anything. I think it looks like a good project, and building's set of plans that you're showing us looks good. Should be a really nice project. So I'm in favor of it.
All right, thank you. I'll take a couple questions here, and then maybe see if Mr. McIntyre has anything else. But my question is, and it might be a staff question or for Mr. Bloom, he was talking about design standards and that the roads and things would be a little bit different because of the type of the project. But the quality of the roads, are you planning on building them to the City of Kenai's road specifications or something similar? I know that was the first question I had.
They will not be built to the specifications of a traditional subdivision as those standards are in the City of Kenai's, ordinances. But they will be more than compliant with, fire access. We will submit for fire review. And we intend to employ one-way street to encourage, easy circulation without a lot of parking on the street. And in the future phases, we also intend to have alleys. Use alleys for access to the garage space to leave the streets unencumbered with garage doors and space.
All right, thank you. And then I guess a follow-up to maybe to Mr. Bloom on this, or Mr. Ostrander, who's here. If they design roads that aren't maybe to the city's specifications and the project takes a turn for the worse, and there's still people that own units in there, but the project itself is kind of falling apart, and there's no money there to necessarily take care of the roads in the wintertime, and you have to be able to take care of them from an emergency standpoint, will the city step in and accept those roads, or how does that work?
I can take the first shot at it. The city wouldn't step in and maintain those roads. I think it's sort of a buyer beware case. And further, if the roads aren't maintained to city standards, that could be, to adequate standards for, I don't know why I'm getting. If the roads weren't maintained going forward in a manner that allowed for adequate emergency access, it could be a reason to revoke the conditional use permit and stop the use.
Okay. Good. Okay, the second question I had, and it was during the staff report, there was a question that sounds like you can give us an answer on it, was regarding the lot widths, and I'm just curious if you can address that. It seems like that should be a pretty cut and dried thing to do, but if you could explain that or what might be the situation with that going forward. I was thinking the applicants, but maybe you can.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. There was a little bit of, I think, confusion as to whether the applicants were going forward with traditional zero lot line development, which requires a greater width than the townhouse requirement in Kenai code. And I think there was maybe some concern about meeting that greater zero lot line development, but not, since all these will fall under the townhouse development, I don't think there's an issue, but I would like the applicants to clarify that.
There will not be any trouble complying with the townhome standard as to lot dimension. as we do not know the exact unit that a buyer will want, we will have to wait until after the unit is selected and of course contracts are in place and drawings are prepared to configure the unit boundary dimensions to fit the size of the physical structure. So for example, obviously if they have a 28-foot wide unit, the boundary would have to be adjusted to accommodate 28-foot wide unit as opposed to a 24-foot wide unit.
All right, and then, and this may or may not be, probably a two-part for administration and you as well. The fact that you'll have to come back every year to submit your conditional use application, or not your applications, but your paperwork for review. And again, I'm kind of maybe outside the boundary a little bit on this, but I'm not sure what the zoning looks like in Homer, but I was be curious if an overlay zone would be appropriate for us to do here so that at some point a conditional use permit wouldn't be required every year. And again, I'm kind of curious to see what you have in Homer, if it's similar, and then maybe for administration, if that's something that the city, we ought to look at down the line to ease up the paperwork end of things and make it a little less murky down the line, maybe.
Commissioner Twait, I can answer that right away. A townhouse development always requires a conditional use permit the way our code is currently written. There are conditional use in every zone, so changing the zoning in this particular area wouldn't alleviate that conditional use requirement.
So again, it'd be back to that buyer beware thing. If for some reason you bought in there and something fell out of compliance and you would lose a conditional use, how would that work?
Yeah, it's buyer beware. You know, I think the individual unit owners could maybe apply for their own conditional use, but I'm not sure exactly how that works. It's one of the complications with this type of, condominium development, but I think that's a risk that all unit owners face regardless of conditional use permit.
All right. That's all I had. I don't know if Commissioner McIntyre said he had a few questions. I don't know if he
are you there?
Has any still.
Yeah, can you hear me again?
Yeah, I believe you got a little bit of a delay, though.
Hello?
So once you ask the question, you might take a little bit before you start hearing the answer.
Oh, okay. Well, you kind of hit on one of my other questions there, Chairman Twait, which is if the townhouses are sold to homeowners, who becomes responsible for fulfilling the requirements that are listed on page 30 about for a conditional use permit? Does the homeowner become responsible for that? Does the association remain responsible? I could see that being one of those places where the ball gets dropped because who knows, down the road, who's going to be responsible for submitting the necessary paperwork. And I think Mr. Bloom answered that question, that basically ultimately it would be the homeowner, and they would be on the hook if the ball got dropped and they didn't meet the requirements. Am I understanding that correctly?
I'll take, this is Mr. Agnew. In any condominium association, and this is a site condo, you have a period of developer control that extends until a requisite number of units are sold. Usually it's a 75%. I can't tell you without the document in front of me what it is in our case. During the developer control, the developer is responsible for complying with all the rules and regulations and laws that are imposed on the development. Certainly, a homeowner is responsible for their own acts, but as far as the compliance of the development, that's on the developer. So once you get 75% of the units sold, then the association takes over the management of the association and would be responsible to rectify any non-complying issues.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Mr. McIntyre?
And submitting the annual conditional use permit paperwork.
So, Mr. McIntyre, that requirement would either be on the developer
Well, I
or
followed
the
up and asked,
association.
so the association then would also be responsible for. Okay, okay. Yeah. I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Hi.
Commissioner Greenberg.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that. So in the city of Kenai, there's no way to have a townhouse without having to apply every year with a condition or update to conditional use every year. Is that something that we could look at addressing through the land use table for the zones and doing some updating there, so this is not an issue, or is this common that in most communities the association will deal with this on an annual basis? Or it seems like a lot of work, a lot of effort.
Thank you, Commissioner Greenberg. I can't tell you whether it's common in other communities. That is the case right now. It's certainly something that the commission could look at, although, and Willie might be able to help me out, but I don't think the annual reporting requirements are really that onerous or stringent. It's a pretty easy process, and I believe it's just an administrative review. Is that correct, Willie?
Yes, I send out an annual report. They have to comply with make sure all the real estate taxes are paid, sales taxes are paid. If there's pending assessments that aren't paid, that would be a non-compliance for their certificate. But basically, the time spent is mostly my time. The person filling it out, probably if they sat down and did it, it's going to take them 20 minutes. It's not something that's real burdensome. I don't feel. It doesn't present an undue burden on the property owner, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, but is it necessary?
Thank you, Commissioner Greenberg. It is necessary just because the conditional use permit terminates after a year of non-use. So basically, we're just making sure administratively that the use that that the commission approved is continuing. In some cases, if there's other ancillary issues, those might be brought up. But in order to revoke the conditional use permit, it does require a public hearing before the commission. So the revocation is, I don't think it's something that's done lightly, but it's just our way of making sure that these conditional uses don't necessarily last forever if they're not, if there's no activity with them.
Gotcha. Well, thank you.
All right. Last time, anyone else have anything else to add? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, or I guess we have closed the public hearing. Let's take the roll, please.
Chairman Tweed,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halstead,
Yes?
Commissioner McIntyre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, and with all conditional use permits, there is a 15-day appeal period that an affected party can file. If none are filed, then you will receive your permission in 15 days. We thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we will move on. Item G, unfinished business. H, new business. I, pending items. We have none. Takes us to item J, reports. J1, City Council. Councilman Glendenning.
Thank you, Chairman Twait. I'll review two meetings, one from November and one from December, and a special meeting that we had. November the 4th, we elected Bob Malloy as vice mayor, and he'll serve a term for 1 year. He's the senior member of our crew, and we're just delighted to have him serve in that capacity once again. On public hearings, we adopted unanimously a auto aid agreement and supporting operational plan with the Kenai Peninsula Borough for exchange of personnel and equipment response to structure fires. Without belaboring it, there is a boundary and a map set up where shared responsibilities would occur. Primarily, we would go towards Soldotna and meet up with, I believe it's Central Emergency Services there. Also, say something would happen over by VIP. We have a mutual aid agreement there, and thusly going north, even into the industrial complex, we have the equipment sharing and actually training between the groups to accomplish any need that is there. We authorized the award of a facility management agreement for the Kenai multipurpose facility. That's the ice skating rink, and that's Red Line, who has managed it successfully all these years, and we just continued that arrangement. We also got our regular meetings calendar set, and so that is public and is on record. We authorized a budget transfer for the Senior Citizens Fund Home Meals Department. This is Meals on Wheels, and this is something that is very, very, very vital to those folks that depend on this service, especially in this time of COVID. We adopted authorization of a purchase of real property in the area of the bluff erosion. This is a continuing project that the city has to acquire these properties to facilitate the build out of the bluff stabilization project when it does happen. And we also amended the city grant disbursement program, utilizing funds for coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security to provide a grant for the Challenger Learning Center of Alaska for the provision of educational services. What happened is when the COVID hit, of course, they had depended on in-person attendance from from a good portion of the state, and actually industrial participants who would take part in the water rescue services. But with the COVID and the restrictions for group meetings, they very quickly pivoted and came about with virtual learning programs, which seem to be very, very well accepted and appreciated by those that participate. And it's an adjunct to the learning experience that kids have through the school system. We approved the mayor's nomination for council liaisons and appointments to commissions and committees, and I'm yours for a year. And we approved unanimously a special use permit for Raven for a warm storage of a de-icing truck. On the 23rd, we had a special meeting, And this was in response to a proposed North Pacific Fishery Management Council decision that could close all federal waters to Cook Inlet commercial fishing, and it was unanimous. It was sponsored by our Mayor Gabriel, and it was unanimously supported and signed by the council. Just fast forwarding, I think it's first and foremost in the newspapers now, and everybody is fairly well acquainted with it. Our Mayor Gabriel jumped in and got us our oar in the water quickly, so at least we could weigh in and get our desires and concerns known. On the 23rd, let's see, I'll go here one more. December 2nd, regular city council meeting here in the chambers. Victoria Askin was appointed to city council. We had 9 applicants, and all were very well accredited, very well received. It was a multi-tiered voting system. Some of it even involved drawing of straws should there have been a tie, but it was fair and well received by who participated. And what we did is I termed it a Kenai Thunderdome. 9 comes in, 1 comes out. So, but there are no second place people. They all were winners, and we encouraged each and every one of them to look at our commissions and committees and participate in our municipal government in that way, and that way you gain experience. You find out if you like us and we like you, and you'll know what the process is for making sausage in the legislative manner. Let's see. We enacted unanimously increasing revenues for a professional service agreement to develop a condition of assessments for the airfield drainage safety area and asphalt runway areas of the municipal airport. We found that certain of the drain fields and piping that had been in place for some time were starting to fail, and it was observed by airport personnel, and we're making arrangements to have those repaired, and of course the FAA will help us with that. We approved the use of a fleet replacement fund for the purpose of 3 police department trucks using the state of equipment and fleet contract. What the thought was is that we would use trucks now for patrol cars. Secondly, the second use would be once they're no longer meet the standard for police service, they could be rotated into the city fleet for public utilities. It could be used for road maintenance. It could be used for parks and rec. And also there was, at least in the discussion, I don't know, it was part of the decision that maybe more protection would be afforded for the users of those vehicles if you have a larger, bulkier vehicle. And we authorized a budget transfer for the CARES Recovery Act to increase funding for housing assistance, food assistance, and first responder payroll. And that is an active endeavor, and of course it'll go till the end of this month. And we adopted a resolution adopting allocation method for the shared fisheries business tax and certifying that this method fairly represents the distribution of significant effects of fisheries business activities in the Cook Inlet. Basically what it is that there's a landing fee that is collected from fishers and distributed to municipalities based on population. And so we adopted a straightforward accounting method to manage that. And the last item is that we appointed for commissions and committees the appointment of Glenda Feakin, Darrell Lichlider, Paul Menega, Terry Wilson, Don Irwin, Rachel Craig, Mike Dunn, Bob Peters, Grant Wisniewski, and David Rignall for the openings that were available on the commissions and committees. And I believe the P&Z doesn't follow in this sequence. It will be revealed here in the next meeting. I think it's an agenda item for us. And that ends my my comments.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilman Glendenning?
I just have one out of curiosity on the rotation of the new plan for the police cruisers. What is the natural life expectancy before they're terminated?
I believe I see some vehicles out there that are, 5, 6 years old, and I think it's a combination of wear and tear, which is noted, but also mileage. But there's a lot of idling with these vehicles too. But the number 100,000 sticks in my mind. Maybe that's a Washington State protocol. I don't know, but there's a definite life schedule for it. And when it's no longer suitable for public safety purposes, it can be adopted into municipal use.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Councilman Glendenning out there in Zoom land? All right, we will move on then to item J2, Borough Planning. Vice Chair Fikes.
Thank you, Chairman Tway. We went ahead and met on November 9th, and we went ahead and reviewed and granted 8 plats. And our topics of discussion for that one, let me check my notes. We had a right-of-way vacation that we approved in the Poppywood area. Let's see. That one went fairly quick. That was the only one for that one. So we had the 8 plats, and then we had the right-of-way vacation. That one was a short and sweet meeting. And then that pushed us on to our last one, which was the November 30th meeting. And that one had quite a few more plats to go through. And all of those were considered and approved. And then we had, for new business, we had a authorization to amend the Salteshi Trails lease agreement, which was presented with a discussion, a little bit of history on that, and some plans moving forward. So that was interesting to hear, and that was subsequently approved. We had some discussion and approval on a site location for spit spots to do a cell tower. And that was going to be for the Nikiski Fire Station number 3. And then we had a building exception setback in the Anchor Point area that was approved. And we had a utility easement vacation also in the Anchor Point area that was approved. And then we had another building setback that took us into the Nikiski area around Island Lake. And that one was approved. And then we had a utility easement vacation that was in the Anchor Point area that also was approved. And then that took us into the Sterling area for utility easement, and that one was ultimately approved. And then we went back into the, that was the right-of-way vacation in the Terrace View subdivision off of Maricoa, and that one was approved. And the only one that gave us some concern was the one that was in the Echo Lake area. And that was ultimately approved, and the concerns on that one was a replat. And so what they were looking to do was take a larger developed or larger undeveloped area and break it down into smaller lots. But there was a pond or lake, if you will, and some surrounding properties, and so there was concern that if you were taking this larger parcel and subdividing it and then eventually developing it, what was that impact going to be on that surrounding lake and the fish and the neighboring septic systems and what have you, and there was some discussion on that, but it was ultimately discussed through the surveyors that had done some preliminary drill work and some testimony as to everything that would be addressed would not result in a negative impact to that waterway. So other than that, we adjourn for the evening.
All right, thank you. Again, I don't know if anyone has any questions out there. They are still out there, right? Okay, all right. Just don't see them up on the screen anymore, so I was just curious. All right, we'll move on then to J3, City Administration. Mr. Ostrander.
No one's out there anymore? Wow. Oh, there they are. Thank you, Chair Twite. A couple things on the administrative report. An update on our third quarter sales tax for the city. Got those numbers about 10 days ago. And surprising again, third quarter sales tax for the city is up year over year, about almost 3.5%. So that's the third quarter we've seen in a row where we've seen an increase in sales tax year over year. When we initially put this budget together, we anticipated we'd see a significant reduction in sales tax, but it just hasn't come to fruition yet. This next quarter, when we're losing the extra unemployment benefits, the PFD was put out earlier this year when the $1,200 stimulus checks aren't out there. That'll be the real test on what this last quarter of the year indicates. But we've been real pleased with what we've seen so far during the pandemic, so good news there. Tonight, the council had, and actually the incident management team had a meeting with Dr. Zink and her team, and it was actually pretty informative. If you have a chance, I'd go back and take a look at it. I believe that is going to be available. Very informative. Her team is always really honest and provides really good information to the questions that are asked, so that is out there for you to take a look at. Update on the Bluff project. We are actually putting together a package right now to send out on the street to hire a contractor to design the project. So this will be the next step and the last step needed before we can begin construction. We had a meeting with the Corps yesterday, and we are on track to get that out as quickly as we can. There's a lot of details associated with this package that needs to be put in there, as you'd guess, with working with the Corps, but it's the next big step to moving the project forward. And last thing is, at your next meeting, you will have a new planner on board. So our new planner starts on the 21st of this month. Your next meeting, I believe, is scheduled for the 23rd of this month. At this point, it looks like it's highly likely that will be canceled. There's a slight possibility it could still happen, but at this point, it looks like it'll be canceled due to lack of agenda items. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Vice Chair Fikes.
On that revenue report, does that by chance include any online sales tax, or is there any current information on that?
Through the chair, Commissioner Fikes, it's a good question because the same question that came up at the council meeting when I presented that, and I'm going to give you the right answer because I gave the wrong answer to council. But it does not include online sales, so that will be additional. Although I will tell you that our projections on online sales for this year are below what we had anticipated. We thought we were going to get about $250,000 worth of online sales tax revenue. It looks like it's trending more towards maybe slightly less than $200,000 for the year. Although we are seeing it continuing to increase as the months progress. So we're hopeful that we'll see that continue to increase over time.
So on that same thought, just as a structural understanding, so that's the city's portion. Do you have any input or any info on maybe the boroughs, just to understand, so if that's our portion, because it's kind of a new deal moving forward?
It is a new deal, and I don't have any specific information on how the borough's projections are playing out, and Mr. Bloom is a part of the commission. He might have some additional information.
Yes, statewide, we're just not seeing the numbers that we thought we would, but it's taken a while. Right now, I think we have just over 700 sellers registered, and that number just keeps jumping up and up. So as more and more users or sellers register, we'll see that increasing. Right now, I think the city's getting between $16,000 and $18,000 a month. We just started in March. I think we're about $80,000 a year, or from inception to right now. But month to month, we see the numbers are steadily increasing.
Great, thank you.
Anyone online up there want to ask a question of Mr. Ostrander or Mr. Bloom? I caught part of that meeting tonight, but I didn't catch it all. And I was just curious, as far as the rollout of the vaccines, are they going to be proportionate in communities, or how? I know there's the different tiers or the priorities, but are they straight just proportionate on population to the first phase of that?
Thank you, Chair Twade. They have tiered it out, like you say. There's a 1A, 1B, 1C, and then a 2 tier. The 1A is going to healthcare providers, first responders, also long-term health care facilities and their staff, and they are going to be sending out the vaccine all across the state, depending on the number of individuals within those communities that fall within that first category. They were talking today about some of the difficulties with the Pfizer vaccine, and that it has to be kept at -70 below, and they're in packages of 975 doses. And so there are communities that can't take 975 doses, and once they send it to the community, they have to use it within 5 days. So logistically, it sounds like it's quite a project for the state, but I do know they're trying to distribute as equitably as possible amongst that group of that 1A group.
Okay. Follow up on that too. I tried to type a question in there. I don't know if it got through on the YouTube channel or not, but I was curious with the therapeutics that are out there too. I'm curious, are they going to be used in conjunction as far as getting our lives back to normal? Are they going to factor in therapeutics at all, or is it just going to be vaccinations? I don't know if she addressed that at all or not.
She didn't address therapeutics on the call. I would assume that they're going to continue to use therapeutics for anyone who is COVID positive and needs treatment. They did talk about, Dr. Zink talked about the progression of the vaccine, and she actually equated it to the passing of the seasons as far as, we're coming up on the shortest day of the year, and, going from December 20th to 21st, you're not going to see much of a difference. But once we get to the equinox, you're likely going to see a big difference in that the number of patients are going to be down. And then as we get to the solstice, she said you should plan on this point. They're hoping you can plan on having your solstice party. So that's good news.
Great. Thank you. I guess nobody else has anything. We will move on then to item K, additional public comments. No one? All right. We have no informational items. Next meeting, December 23rd, tentatively at this point in time. Commissioners' comments and questions. Commissioner Springer.
I don't believe I have anything additional. Sounds like you guys covered everything.
All right. Commissioner Greenberg. He might have left us.
No, I'm here. I'm sorry.
All right.
So there was a pop-up in front of my microphone thing. No, I don't have anything. Sorry.
After all that, huh? All right. Commissioner McIntyre.
I don't have anything.
All right. Commissioner Halstead.
I think that's great news to hear about Mr. Malloy's appointment, and it's always great to have Councilman Glendenning on our side. Good to have you for another year.
All right. I have nothing else to add, so with the business complete, the meeting is adjourned.